I've been looking forward to this conversation for a while, only because I knew that Vinny, we're talking to Vinny Annunziato. Um,
So
I knew he was going to retire, and we knew that was coming, but we really wanted to catch up with him, post retirement, just to see how things are going with him and all that kind of good stuff. So we're here now, and I know Vinny, you're still back east. How are you doing? How are things going now that you're enjoying the non-government job, non-civil servant life?
Well, I'll tell you, the first thing that I don't miss is Sunday night blues.
it's like, oh no, I
I
got to go
wake
to
up
work
and
tomorrow.
every day is a Saturday to me, right? So that's been great. I loved my career at CBP. I mean, I got to do such interesting things, and it was really good. But my gosh, every day I wake up, I know I'm going to get paid. I can't complain about that. And for you know, uh, you did your dues, so you're getting that pension coming in, which is really what it's all about. So it's nice. It's nice being home, um, being able to. I don't know if your viewers will find this interesting, but I actually got my lifeguard certificate.
Really?
Would you believe
So
that? I
your
lifeguard
plan
at,
is to sit out by the pool, right?
well, I lifeguard at the YMCA, and it's kind of
Nice.
odd. I'm 60 years old, and I'm with a bunch of 16-year-olds. But you know what? I have fun, and I do. I love swimming. I do a master's class with swimming. So it's nice to have that kind of free time, you know, and I'm enjoying that. And then I'm picking and choosing what I want to do, where I want to do it, and when I want to do it. So that I like a lot. Yeah.
Let me stop for a second. This, folks, as we said, we're catching up with Vinny Annunziato. He was was a director or executive director.
Director. Everybody
Direct-
thinks I was an executive director, but
Well,
I was a
you acted
director.
like one. I'm telling you,
I don't know how to take that, Andy.
yeah, no, no, in a good way. I really mean that in the most good way. But anyway,
Yeah.
Vinny is one of these guys. He's with CBP, and so, folks, this is going to be a great conversation. But also, if you're in need of somebody that has some really great IT expertise and knowledge and vision, boy, this guy's the one to do it. Vinny is a great friend of Lalo of mine and has been on the show several times, but this is the first time as a non-government employee.
On government.
I love that. And here's the thing, Vinny, you not only have just a fantastic career, you got a lot of things done, and I'm looking forward to hearing some of the last things you were working on, if you would, whatever obviously you can talk about. But you're a weightlifter, and you are in art, not an artist, excuse me, a writer. Had your own, was it 2 or 3 novels?
3 novels and a couple of short stories out
Yeah,
there. In fact, I'm hoping to
yeah.
get back to a couple of them now that I'm retired.
To do the
More, yeah.
sequels and all that. Well, you do a lot of things. You're a great guy, highly respected in the industry, but you're just a blast to be around. And I just enjoyed every time we would get together. We'd when nobody else was looking around, we'd laugh and all that. You can't really say a whole lot when you're part of the government. I get that. On the same tokens, it's just some great projects we've gotten to work together on. But all that to say, so it's wonderful now that you're out of the government. So with that, what about the career, and what about the transition here?
Oh my gosh, I don't know where to start. You know, for folks that don't know me, most notably, probably the single window was one of my
Oh,
biggest accomplishments. Yeah. I can even tell you a little story about that that's kind of funny, but it's the culmination of being able to deliver, for 48 agencies. And by the way, it was just recently finished off, not too long ago. So the new director that stepped in, she retired as well, but she was able to get some of the last pieces in that needed to get there. Um, but the single window, just really quickly, at the time when it emanated, I don't know if you would know Tim Scud. Do you know Tim Scud?
Yep. Yep.
He was, at the commissioner level at the Treasury, and I'm a short guy. I'm like 5'6", So I walk in, and Tim Scud and his group for ITDS, God bless him, they had made this, the way that they wanted to do the data, and it was counter to what I was doing with something called the Lacey Act at the time that I had designed, and I wanted to build off of it. So I
Mhm.
actually had to go in and propose to Tim and his team what we were doing. And every single one of them that was in that room was 6 foot and above. So I felt like going up against a basketball team, and I'm a GS-14, right, with all this brass from all the different partner government agencies. And so I went in there and I actually told him, I said, look, I don't mean to sound pompous. I probably did. But I said, when somebody gives me something to do, I'm going to get it done. And this is the way I want to do it. And I went through step by step what I had planned to do. And ironically, at the time, I had been working for the great Cindy Allen. And one of the things that Cindy did for me is she really opened me up to being a bit independent, autonomous to make sure I'm getting the stuff done without always having to check in. And because, it just slows it down. And
Right.
one day I said to Cindy, I said, Cindy, I need to go home. I every time I start to work on the message set, somebody's interrupting me. There's fires I got to put out. I need to just go home. And I really did a comparison between what I had done, what Tim's group had done, and it wasn't connecting. And I sat down in the bedroom. I told my wife, I just need time. I need to be left alone. Don't let the kids bother me. No phone calls, nothing. So for 2 hours, I stared at these documents. All right. And all of a sudden, it hit me that it needed to be a declaration. That was what was missing. So I needed to identify the agency, the product, and whether it was parts of a product or an actual product, a whole product.
Mhm.
And that unlocked it for me. You know what happened? It was so much brain power, is everything I had. I passed out for like 2.5 hours after that. I mean, I just went out cold. I figured it out and went out cold. And from that point on, we had the basics, and the basis by which we could build that message set out.
Mhm.
And I knew it was going to be successful because everybody that I had looking at it that was on the technical side was going, that works. That works. And we tied it in at the HTS level so that when the codes came in, you knew what agency was responsible for that classification. Now, I can't tell you it was perfect. It
Mhm.
wasn't. And in my later years, when I moved from overseeing the cargo system and delivering that through ACE, I went into innovation. And Andy, I will tell you, innovation was like being a kid in a candy shop for me, right? Because it was never a problem if I had any ideas because you needed them. I was able to get things from seed, you know, and grow them, which is what I love to do, to take a concept and then grow it into something just like with the writing, right? And and I really got into some interesting stuff. And some of the big projects, well, one of the biggest projects was the global interoperability piece, which is still, as I understand it, going with customs today. They're still looking to implement it, but it was a complete kind of an overhaul of the supply chain in a way that made a lot more sense, focusing on the product, getting the data as it's happening and linking everything together. In fact, when we showed off the screens I wasn't there to see this, but it was a very proud moment for me with the development team. They showed off those screens, and I had never heard of this happening before. Everybody was so enamored with what we had built that they applauded. I was like, where does that come from? And I was so proud of the people that worked for me and the development team. They took my ideas, they designed it, and they designed it even better than I had expected they would. And I think that was noticed. So it really started to change the way that we looked at supply chains, and uh, having just in time data and all of that. I mean, from my perspective, I think that's potentially a really good modernization effort that should be closely looked at. I mean, I can't tell what the agency will do; they're testing it out, but I would love to see it grow. And I certainly think, from the perspective of global, it could tie a lot of things together that haven't been tied together before. So that was a great project. And all that's public, all that's there.
Well, hey, Vinny, here's the thing that I saw in some of that, because going way back, you were talking about the single window, and then, you know, we did the entry simplification process. I saw a change during that time where customs was partnering with the transportation and the brokers and the supply chain. And we were no longer being looked at as almost like the enemy. It's like, hey, we have information. The private sector has so much information to offer. And so putting things in perspective, um, for our audience, it's like, you got to remember, it's like, all right, you would have a shipment, let's say, that would go into a container, it'd go on the ocean. You would do some, you would have a pre-filing of it's called the ISF. But then you would also have the entry, and you would prepare that. And if for some reason, the broker could prepare that entry and transmit it, if for some reason that the port changed, let's say there was a weather, let's say a crane crapped out or something, and so the carrier says, I can't go into, say, Savannah, I got to go into Baltimore. The broker would have to delete the entry, redo the entry, and
Yeah,
then transmit it. And it was like, and then it would go back through all of the different,
right.
scrutinies and agencies, versus now it's like, okay, here's where we think it's going to be, the port we're planning on it to be, and the information goes through. But now the carrier transmits their manifest just like they always did. And now all that was married up, and you were a key factor and bridging all of this data and bringing it together. And the thought initially was, oh, well, the importer's just port shopping. They want to change the port. It's like, guess what? Importer has no control over what port it initially goes through, um, because the carrier may have to make a change.
First of all, Andy, I never called you the enemy. I called you the dark side. Make sure you're aware of that. Now that I'm over here, by the way, I think I miscalculated. In fact, I've been dealing with some people that I never thought I would be in front of. I jokingly say I should have been a little bit nicer. There's some really influential people that I've been dealing with, so it's incredible. But the reason I bring up the GIS is, I don't know where the agency will ultimately fall. It is experimental. Everything I do on the innovation side is experimental. We are not allowed, as innovation people in the government, at least when I was there, to bring it into production. That's got to be decided by the folks that own the money, right? And upper management. But at least it opened us up to the possibilities. And for me, because I was running a lot of the modernization under my team, or prepping for a lot of the modernization, I was able to see across some things, that I would have liked to have been able to accomplish, even if you just think about the PGA message set, for example. Let me put it to you that way. one of the downfalls is this duplication of data. Well, what if in the new world we could reduce that? So that maybe you're sending in, 30% less data than you normally would have, and it's more efficient. There were things that we were working on to take away some of the antiquated ways that we were doing things. And at least with innovation, what it does is it opens the eyes of both the business and the technical side. And I'll tell you, I went round and round with some of the tech folks because at one point we were going in different directions. So I had my team focusing on these global interoperability standards, which were communal, it's worldwide. And then there were other areas where they were focusing on proprietary systems. So the problem that was starting to occur from my perspective was you start having competing systems and
Right.
you have to keep up with all of them. Why not just go into the common platform? So, like I said, I was very proud to be a part of, working with the groups and helping them to understand those aspects. And I think, the government just tends to move forward, and it will pick its tactical direction as things prove out. So hopefully that will help in those areas. Um, but I did also work, by the way, in artificial intelligence. I'm going to start out, and I'm going to probably sound a little pessimistic, but give me a little bit, and then as we get through reality, I don't know if Lalo wants to comment on what I'm saying. As we get through a little bit of the reality of what's going on currently, I want to talk a little bit about the future of AI. But um, I was my team and myself. I think we were out ahead of private sector for a while, and I say that because I had been listening to Jensen Huang, and I'm not comparing myself to Jensen, by the way. He's the CEO of NVIDIA, and I would say that some of the stuff that he was saying in the beginning really put a stamp on what we were doing 2 years or 2 to 3 years ahead of time when I had been working with the AI. And I can't really talk about the project itself,
Right.
but what I found out with using large language models is they're only useful if you have your basics in place. You have to have a good
Right.
business reason to be using AI. And I will say that AI in and of itself should not be an impressive word to anybody because we've been hearing it for 20 years. All right. And it comes in different forms. It used to be, the focus was on machine learning and then trend analysis. And now it's on these large language models. And you can even get into AGI, which is the artificial general intelligence, and then ASI, which is artificial super intelligence, which is where everybody's getting a lot of hype.
Right.
So I would say, I work in development, but I'm a business person. So the difference between a business and a technical guy is a technical guy's in there developing, but the business guy usually has the overview of everything, right? And they understand how all the systems are interconnecting, and they understand how to get the operations together. So when we started doing the large language models, what I used to call a consultant, I wanted to build a consultant because do you guys use, like the AI for a search instead of Google? Will you use AI?
Yes.
Yes.
Actually, I've gotten to where I use it quite a bit.
So it's not really greatly impressive. It's good, but it's not like overwhelming. And I had people coming up to me saying, I use AI and I don't really like it that much. And I said, well, how are you using it? And they're using it like a Google search. And if you're using a large language model, it's not just supposed to be a one and done.
Right.
Really, what you're supposed to be doing is having a conversation, just like you and I are having a conversation. And if you notice, when we're having a conversation, there's a beginning and there's an end and there's a transition, right?
Right.
So if you haven't understood this before, what the large language models do is they keep track of the conversation. So if I say to you, hey, I'm going to go to or if I'm saying to the LLM and I want to set up something where I'm going to start traveling there, I'm going to a conference in Florida, let's say, and I need a place to stay. The LLM will understand that context. So it understands that you need to stay somewhere, and it's not thinking of anything other than, some form of hotel room, right? Or, some place that you can stay. 'Cause it's not going to give you a long-term place. It's thinking you're going to go for a conference, and it's going to understand it. But the thing is that the LLMs aren't thinking. They're presupposing the data that what you're going to say, what's going to be there. So to me, it's an advanced form, or a type of, I should say, a type of trend analysis, and it's predicting what's going to come next. Really, with today's technology, as we'll just call it a transitional phase, you really need to have the human in the loop. So I've been kind of coining the acronym HAT, human assisted technology. Okay.
Oh,
Because really what should be happening is the power of AI right now, what the human can't do is look at these large volumes of data and understand or make sense of it. But the large language models, the AI that you're running can. So when somebody comes in and they start having a conversation, let's say they want to, learn about a certain product or how to move a certain product a certain way, they really should be able to go in there, have this conversation, and see where it goes, as if I'm talking with you as a subject matter expert. So now you're
mhm.
using the machine as a subject matter expert, but what you're going to do is you're going to go back and make sure, one, it's not hallucinating, right? Just making up answers. Two, you want to make sure that you know the source of where that information came from. All right. And three, you got to decide whether or not you agree. And I think that when you start taking that into context, um, I think that's really the power of it. The human as a decision maker, the um, and kind of like a management scenario where you're the manager of what's coming in from that subject matter expert. You may not accept everything that all your subject matter experts give you, but you're making the decision with the best available data that's there. And I think that is really a wise way of doing it. The other thing that I would say statistically is a little scary is there's not a very high success rate going on right now with AI. Um, the concept of a business should always be, how do I get my bottom line dollar to expand, right? How do I save cost? How do I save time? So I think a lot of the investment right now has not caught up with what AI can do. And I'm not talking about an AI that can give you a PowerPoint presentation. I'm talking about something that is in there and actually doing things. And there's some oddball things that are going on that I disagree with. I'll get to that in a second. But for the most part, if you have a really good development team that understands where your headaches are, where your problem is,
Yeah.
and they're making the decision to use AI, it shouldn't only be understood as only AI. It may need to use a number of different technologies to bring together what it is that you actually need. So it may be that there's a form of AI that you're using, and on top of that, you're mixing in validations and all these other things that may have to happen. And then you have a good business case that's serving the need. So there are some systems that I have seen out there, some software that I've seen out there that is really working well and doing what it's supposed to and raising the bar. And I think that's it. But what I would not be sold on is somebody just telling me they're using AI, and I think there's some some magic wand that's being cast, and all of a sudden everything's going to get rosy, right? And your investment's got to pay off, so it's got to be doing something that's going to pay you back. And I think that's where they're struggling right now.
Vinny, but there's also I kind of want to make a point here in that
Sure.
there's a big differentiation between kind of like what Andy said. You're prompting, you're talking to it, you're giving it all the. There's a big difference between that, which is what everybody normally right now has access to, and a system where it was specifically built with Rails so that it doesn't hallucinate as much. Like your classification systems, your
Mhm.
forced labor systems and all that that are built with AI that says, um, hey, um, when you classify this product, use this and don't just go out to the large language model. Or to everything that you have scraped in the internet, and so those are the systems that I feel are the ones that are helping tremendously right now.
Yeah.
There's gobs of vendors that we've talked to, both on the podcast and maybe at conferences, that make it a point to let you know that, yeah, you can go to ChatGPT or Claude, or pick your poison, whatever, and say, um, what is the classification for this part, and then describe it as well as you can and everything, and it'll give you an answer. Might be right, might be wrong, but
Yeah.
you enter it again, say tomorrow, unless you have memory and all these other fun tricks uh, installed in your instance. It might give you very different answer.
Yeah.
Whereas,
It might give you a different answer depending on the day.
yeah, exactly, the day, yeah, exactly. And whereas these systems that are built specifically for, like, let's say, classification,
Right.
um, it will give you the right, I mean, the not the right answer, the consistent answer. I shouldn't say right, because you should not depend on that either. Well, number one, and number two, custom says that classification is a human, and say here, well, I guess you can, but if you get audited, and that's on you. But the human needs to be the one that makes that final decision what that tariff classification number is. So
Yeah,
anyway,
you're singing my songs here, Lalo. That's exactly what I'm talking about. I think, again, mixture of technologies. And by the way, I fully believe that you can get to a certain level of classification accuracy using automation. And I am working with some companies right now talking about that. But the thing is that um, ultimately the decision maker has to be the human, right? I mean that, and I would say that there may be things like if you're operating in an area where you're large retail, or anybody, where you got stuff that's happening over and over again, then you're more confident that the classification is pretty much matching what it's got to be, right? But it's when you come in with these new items and they have to be looked at and they're complicated. Just think about like a watch. It's complicated. It's not just a watch, right? The strap, the movement, the
but
crystal, all that other stuff, right? So yeah, it just doesn't happen that way. So, but it's I think where we're starting to go, and I don't know if you want to talk a little bit what I'm starting to do now with
I
profit
was just
trust.
going to ask
yeah,
you,
let's
what's
do
the
that. Let's
future
talk
for
about
Vinny?
what you're doing now.
Yeah, so pretty cool because I went out a little bit silently, even though I've been talking about retiring for 5 years. I wanted a month where things were just I could just relax, and just find myself again. And I didn't really reach out, and I started getting calls, and I did get a company called Profit Trust, which is really, I think, I love what they're doing. I was always, Andy, like you said earlier, my focus was always on what can we do that was best for the government and the trade, but the trade was always secondary to me, right? But now that I'm out in the real world, I'm here to help the trade, right? I want to help them do things better, save money, save time. And I came across Profit Trust, and they are known mainly because they've been around like about 10, 12 years. They are known mainly for helping companies save money on their shipping. And they do a really good job of that. But they
Mhm.
have something now that came out that I'm really intrigued by, and I'm going to start helping them as much as I can to improve what's already a great product. And that is, it's a duty finder. So it goes out and it looks at, are you doing things correctly? Are you missing anything? It really gives people a chance to have something where the AI is looking at bulk areas and looking for those needles in the haystack or the mistakes that might be made. And it's been really proving out tremendously. I mean, the return on investment has been phenomenal for both the products that they have right now. So I signed with Profit Trust, and I'm actually the title that they gave me is a senior vice president. So I'm starting to really talk to some companies, especially some of the larger ones, about what we can do, and it's been taking off real surprisingly fast. But again, it's the same motif. I feel it's like I'm just on the private sector side now instead of the government side, and I
Mhm.
found something that's a bit of a niche, and the savings again, it can be exponential. And what really is intriguing is they won't charge you until you're actually getting money back. So yeah, so until you actually start getting the rebates or the refunds, I should say, they won't charge you, and then they just take a piece of the profit. So all you're doing is watching your bottom line grow on stuff that you might have missed, and it's been fantastic, the reception, and I that is a recent signing. I have my own consulting company, so it's Digital Supply Chain Innovations (DSCI), and I've gotten a number of calls, and I'm amazed and humbled by some of the folks that I've been talking to about, and there's some pretty large projects, some that will really expand off of my knowledge off the PGA message set, and but a lot of it is in development principles. Um, and that's really my bread and butter is development. I love anything to do with software, and I don't let anybody tell me that something's easy because I know software, and
Yeah.
so that's been just fantastic. And again, the um, outpouring of support. It One of the guys that I've been talking to said to me, "Look, you've been under a rock for 29 years." 'Cause I'm just
Well,
like,
it's going to be phenomenal. Although I will say also there is going to be this transition from the government to the private sector. There's going to be ups and downs and all that. Generally speaking, though, the private sector will move a lot faster than the government sector. But I say that with a caveat. Man, you got more results. You were able to navigate within the government structure and get things done better than most people I've ever seen. So it's just going to be a
yeah,
different.
it was a team effort, Andy. I
Yeah.
mean,
Oh yeah.
it, it it's getting people to listen and understand. That's the hardest part, especially with upper management, is getting them to understand. Because sometimes they just either they're just so focused on what the hot spot of the moment is, or uh, there's been like a situation where I thought I gave one of my greatest speeches of all time, and I just completely lost some of the upper management because they didn't understand where I was technically. But I was giving what I thought was more of a technical explanation for the technical folks, but the business folks were lost. And sometimes it's just difficult to translate, especially some of the new things that are coming down into people who are just used to operations. That's frustrating. Um, and I've been told I speak another language sometimes. I think I'm just speaking very clearly, but I do try, especially when I'm out in with the trade members and I'm talking to business folks. I do try and break everything down. I hope today I was pretty clear with what I was talking about with AI. But that communication gap sometimes is a struggle for me. It's the realm of the experience, right? That I speak that day to day with certain people. So
Well, Vinny, I would say that again, I anticipate some phenomenal results of the things that you're looking at and working on, and definitely would as things continue on with the way we're in historic times right now in the import export community and
yes,
trade.
absolutely.
All said and done, again, welcome to the private sector.
Thank you, my friend.
We'll have Benny's contact information on. Like, share us. We appreciate the Simply Trade audience. And with that, folks, have a great day.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Vinny.